Well, Matt, not only has the unprecedented search of former President Donald Trump's Florida home caused shockwaves here in Washington and around the country, but today we've just heard that the House committee that demanded to see Trump's tax returns from back in 2019 has finally been told by an appeals court that they can receive them. The court here in D.C. said that the request was justified as part of the committee's legislative work. You'll remember, of course, that Trump was the first president in 40 years who refused to release his tax returns. Well, now the House Ways and Means Committee has tweeted to say that it expects to receive them immediately. So more bad news for Trump on top of the events overnight in Florida, both of which, of course, will infuriate Trump's supporter base. And as with everything in American politics at the moment, the question is, how might all this impact the midterm elections in November? Will those Republicans who see all this as an unwarranted and unfair attack by the Democrats be energized to come out and vote in stronger numbers later in the year? Certainly, that's what the party is hoping for. So all in all, a tumultuous 24 hours for the former president that started, of course, with that search at Mar-a-Lago yesterday.
There's breaking news out of Palm Beach, Florida.
ABC News is learning of an FBI search at the primary residence of former President Trump.
It's a remarkable development.
In scenes never before witnessed in U.S. history, the FBI yesterday entered Mar-a-Lago, the home of the former President Donald Trump, armed with a search warrant to remove evidence as part of a criminal inquiry by federal prosecutors. The search reportedly relates to an investigation into the removal and potential destruction of White House records by Trump after he left office last year. After a tweet from a local journalist, Trump revealed the news himself in a statement which read, "My beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. They even broke into my safe." The former president wasn't at Mar-a-Lago at the time. Instead, he was in New York, where he was seen leaving Trump Tower yesterday afternoon. We already knew the US National Archives had retrieved 15 boxes of documents, some of them top secret, from Mar-a-Lago in January, and at the time it asked the Department of Justice to investigate. In order to obtain a search warrant, though, US prosecutors would have had to present compelling evidence that classified material was still inside Mar-a-Lago for a federal judge to agree. Neither the FBI nor the Justice Department would comment, but the former president's son, Eric Trump, appeared on Fox News and described the FBI raid as yet more political persecution against his father.
And all of a sudden, 30 agents descend upon Mar-a-Lago. Sean, this didn't come from the little local FBI field office in Palm Beach, Florida. You know who this came from. This came from one place and one building, and that is the White House in Washington, D.C. They want to attack a guy who they view as his greatest threat, is Biden's greatest threat. And that's exactly what Donald J. Trump is.
The former president said he'd already been cooperating with the relevant government agencies and said the raid was simply Democrats upping the ante to try and prevent him from standing to become president again in 2024. Republicans predictably rushed to support Donald Trump, attacking the Justice Department and this threat to the Attorney General from one of the party's most senior politicians. "I've seen enough. The Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of weaponized politicization. Attorney General Garland, preserve your documents and clear your calendar." And Marco Rubio, a Republican senator for Florida, said using government power to persecute political opponents is something we have seen many times from third world Marxist dictatorships, but never before in America. Meanwhile, Trump supporters gathered outside Mar-a-Lago dismissed the raid as just another witch hunt.
Biden administration, the Democrats are weaponizing the FBI, and it has to stop.
In my own opinion, I think it's another unjust, made-up thing like the impeachment hoaxes, and same with the January 6th. Trump didn't do anything wrong with January 6th.
Weaponize DOJ, weaponize FBI, weaponize the IRS.
They all want Trump to run again for president. But if Donald Trump is found guilty of unlawfully removing and even destroying classified documents, It would mean any run for him in 2024 would be in serious jeopardy.
Now we have yet to hear what exactly the FBI agents were looking for in the Mar-a-Lago estate. Was it evidence pointing to Donald Trump's alleged sedition, or evidence that he tried to shred any evidence? As the ex-president mulls another presidential campaign, it is worth remembering that he's already mired in myriad allegations and lawsuits. As he left the White House reluctantly last January to make way for the new tenant, many exhaled and reflected on how much about President Trump had been unprecedented. Travelling with him more than a dozen boxes of documents, some of them highly classified, that Trump should have sent straight to the National Archives, but hung on to for at least a year. That's ostensibly what today's FBI raid was about. What did the president keep, and why did he keep it? And did some of them suffer the same fate as these documents while he was in office, flushed down a White House loo, or one on a foreign trip? Yes, that is Trump's handwriting. What did the president flush, and why did he flush it? His unprecedented status extends to the number of lawsuits and investigations pursuing Donald Trump down to his retirement home in Florida. A dizzying roll call of at least 17 cases, ranging from allegations of instigating the January the 6th raid on Capitol Hill, to trying to tamper with the election results, to allegations of financial fraud, to sexual harassment. If he ends up in court and is found guilty on any one of them, that would exclude him by law from another run at the White House. The most serious case involves Trump's alleged sedition on January the 6th last year in an attempt to overturn the election result. 7 cases brought by Capitol Hill police officers, the DC Attorney General, and an individual member of Congress. This was the subject of the hearings on Capitol Hill. The allegations have yet to result in any indictments against Mr. Trump. Then there's the case brought by the state prosecutor of Fulton County, Georgia, alleging that Donald Trump tried to pressure local officials into falsifying the election count in that state. And then there are at least 25 separate allegations of sexual misconduct against the man who once got caught boasting about this.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the you can do anything.
Long before he entered the White House, Trump was no stranger to lawsuits. There were a staggering 3,500 against him and his companies on everything from tax disputes to defamation charges to sexual misconduct. He lost some, he won many, he settled others, and at least 500 were thrown out. Trump relishes his days in court, but this time the charges are far more serious, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Well, joining me now is Richard Painter, professor at the University of Minnesota Law School and former ethics advisor to President George W. Bush. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Let's start with this obvious question. Do you think, amidst all the criticism of this raid, especially amongst supporters of Donald Trump, that this action by the FBI was justified?
Yes. Under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, the FBI, the police, cannot simply raid someone's home without a search warrant obtained from a judge. So the search warrant was signed by a judge after a showing of probable cause that a crime had been committed and that the documents or other material relevant to that crime was in the home. And that is a constitutional requirement for the search warrant. So a judge signed off on this. And this is an investigation of the theft and destruction of government documents, but also the underlying crimes, which those documents may very well evidence, including the crime of sedition and seditious conspiracy in connection with the attempt to overturn the 2020 election, a plan that proceeded throughout the month of November, December, January through January 6th of 2021.
Now, the Trump crowd is saying that actually most, if not all of the boxes that we saw in our piece being shipped onto the helicopter to Mar-a-Lago had been returned to the National Archives back in February.
Well, the Trump crowd apparently thinks they've looked at those documents, which is interesting. They ought to tell us how they know what's in those boxes. Did he show them? Why did those boxes leave the White House to begin with? And what was retained at Mar-a-Lago? What was destroyed? What was flushed down the toilet? That's what we need to find out. Not only is destruction of documents a federal crime, a destruction of federal documents, but it's even more serious crime when there's an ongoing investigation. That's obstruction of justice, and then we have sedition on top of that.
With all this and all these other cases against Donald Trump and all the other allegations and investigations, how likely is it, do you think, that he might actually end up in court or even in jail?
Well, that has yet to be determined because he would have to be criminally charged by the Department of Justice or by the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia is investigating him for solicitation of election fraud, and then there'd be a trial. To get a criminal conviction, guilt must be proved beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury.
But is he heading to court? Is he heading to court at the moment, do you think?
I believe he would be. I believe there will be criminal charges either in the state of Georgia or for the federal government or both. There's abundant, I would say overwhelming evidence that Donald Trump committed serious crimes.
And if he ends up in court but he's found innocent, does that derail his plans for another run at the White House or not?
Well, that's all up to the voters. First, the Republican primary, if he chooses to enter, and then, of course, the voters in a general election. I would say that he's an absolutely terrible candidate for the presidency. The Republicans have other people they can run. And I will say, if he's found guilty of sedition and insurrection, he is disqualified from office under the 14th Amendment, Section 3, which specifically disqualifies anyone from public office who's engaged in sedition.
The final question, it's a really important one. When you hear the supporters of Donald Trump saying they don't believe any of this stuff, it's all a witch hunt, which of course he's also been saying himself, how worried are you that basically America is so riven by tribal divisions that neither side accepts, the rule of law and the level playing field and the institutions, and that is a recipe for trouble?
These are the extremists, and we have extremists on the far left and extremists on the far right. The vast majority of Americans who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and again in 2020 are not conspiracy theorists, or not people who believe that Donald Trump actually won the election. There is a group of people who actually still thinks that Donald Trump won the election. The same people who think that the coronavirus vaccine doesn't do any good, or that there are various other conspiracy theories. We've had conspiracy theories since the dawn of time, but the vast majority of Americans, including Republicans, I think are quite fed up with this lie, the big lie.
All right, got to leave it there. Richard Painter, thank you very much indeed.